So the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is going to take a break right now with the prosecution putting on its closing argument. You just heard the judge say that it'll be less than an hour before they come back. Judge Bruce Schroeder there had given his instructions, and it took, well, part of an hour. And so we're running a little bit behind, but they are on track for up to 2 hours of closing arguments from the prosecution alone. They were then initially going to take a break for lunch, come back for the defense closing arguments, and then rebuttal. So we'll have to see what exactly the timing will be like. But in this short break, I'll bring it out to the couch here on Outnumbered with my co-hosts, Kayleigh McEnany and Emily Compagno. So, Emily, we're watching here. There was contention along the way about what the instructions were for the jury. And then the judge took a vote on whether or not they were going to take a break and go home tonight before they start to deliberate, no matter what time they finish this evening.
That's right, and it appears that they will start fresh tomorrow morning, so don't expect a verdict tonight, likely, unless something changes. This is as of the moment. And just to back up and just remind viewers, now that we're dealing with, or what we're dealing with, after all of the deliberation over the jury instructions, as you mentioned, so there are 5 counts, and 4 of those counts, the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse, has the self-defense privilege that the jury can assess whether or not that's in play. So 4 of them he does. And the recklessly endangering safety, that is the one where it doesn't matter if there's no self-defense. That's the one where it's essentially pointing the weapon at an innocent bystander, sort of the bottom line. But he's charged with first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree recklessly endangering safety, first-degree recklessly endangering safety again. This was the jump kick man from the video. First-degree intentional homicide and attempted first-degree intentional homicide. And again, all 4 of the ones that resulted in a wound or in a death, he has that self-defense privilege. And the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt for each count. And then, as you and I have been discussing, the standard for whether or not self-defense, if the jury finds it, it's whether a reasonable person in that situation reasonably believes his life is in danger or being threatened with great bodily harm and use a reasonable amount of force.
Right. And, you know, Kayleigh, we often talk to you about your political acumen, but you also are an attorney. You went to law school. And so I want to ask you, just from another legal perspective, you're watching this. We always have the camera on the defendant, the judge. Sometimes it kind of floats between the prosecutor or whatnot. And during the occasion, too, we'll see family members of Kyle Rittenhouse. And just kind of your observations in the jury today. Yeah. Not the jury, but the courthouse.
Yes, you saw that camera steady on Kyle Rittenhouse's mom. You've got to imagine this is excruciating for her. This is her son's future, potential imprisonment, and watching her face and trying to read what must be going through her mind as she watches her son in this critical moment. I also wanted to bring up a point and maybe get some reaction from Emily to this. There was that 6th count that was dropped. That was possession of a deadly weapon, because the prosecution essentially conceded that he was not carrying a short-barreled rifle, and that was an exception to that count. So this is count 6 that was dropped. Jonathan Turley, really interesting, made this point. The overreach on the 6th count captures much about this case. The speed and framing of the prosecution clearly satisfied public demand, because we know there was a lot of public demand here. So they satisfied public demand, the prosecutors, but undermined any ultimate case against Kyle Rittenhouse. So I'm curious, Emily, you know, bringing this 6th count, charging to this degree, did it essentially undermine their case while appeasing this feverish public sentiment of going after Kyle Rittenhouse?
That's such a great question. And I think that will all go into these jury deliberations that will begin. This is what the jury is going to consider. This is what they're going to weigh. At the end of the day, how it's been presented, both in the macro sense and also in the micro sense, whether each element of every count was indeed proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and subsequently whether the self-defense privilege has been honored in this way. And I have to point out as well, you know, it's an interesting question. Why is the jury not sequestered when 500 National Guard are on standby? Because isn't that what folks read about when they go home? So granted, the jury has been instructed, of course, not to read about the trial and whatnot, but it's sort of a common theme and a general question that a lot of times we ask in these high-profile trials. How can you avoid it?
Well, I have another question.
We just take an elevator here and we see the news. So how could a jury member effectively be protected from seeing, oh my gosh, the National Guard is deployed on standby for the potential repercussions of the verdict I'm engaging in today?
It's been a while since I was in downtown Kenosha, Wisconsin, because, of course, I was right next door in Minneapolis for many years as a news anchor. But I don't even know if you'd have to read it, right? You gather 500 of anybody, and you might see that if you're in downtown Kenosha leaving the courthouse. Like, I would imagine that there might even be more of an instance of just knowing the presence of that outside of the news. I don't want to jump the gun on that, but if you put 500 of anybody and you walk me out of this building, I might see them. And I know that they're using private entrances and they're doing things to protect the identity of the jurors. I get that, but that's a lot not to know. That your city is going to need that. So here's my question, though. If you need that for a projected verdict, how culpable was the city of Kenosha not to have more of a response on the night of, and let's not call them peaceful protests that night, because we've all seen the video. And when people, and I say this all the time, Kayleigh, you always laugh, Martin Luther King did not march at 3 o'clock in the morning. He didn't march at night, not even like 10 o'clock. I mean, you do things in the daytime with your protest signs and those things because you want to get your messaging out. So if the city knew that people were on the streets in those numbers, and you heard the prosecutor saying that there were other people carrying AR-15 style guns, like I'm going to get to the question, why not that night? Why just tonight and other nights as the verdict comes? Why not that night? Is that too much to ask?
No, and that's, I think, part of the larger conversation we've been having as well. That's exactly right. Why now is the National Guard being deployed on standby by a governor that refused to do anything for days in those moments when people had felt the need to go out on the streets to protect life and limb?
They were destroying businesses and everything.
Destroying livelihoods. That's sort of the argument. That's something that the defense has brought up as well. Granted, of course, it matters again, the micro sense, it matters just what happened in those moments. But the question is, why was this 17-year-old out there on the streets? Why did he feel the need to be out there? And note as well that, remember, one of the original charges had to do with him breaking a curfew. It was established that there wasn't one at that moment, which is why that count was dropped, even before the trial, the beginning of the trial. And so it goes to your larger question, which why wasn't there a curfew? Why wasn't there any semblance of leadership by that governor, by the mayor, et cetera?
Do we have any thoughts?
That's a question for the governor, because look, I went to Kenosha with the former president. We stood in front of a business that had been burned to the ground, and people said, President Trump, why didn't you send the National Guard? He didn't have the power. The governor does. It seems like he's not making the same mistake twice, and that's good because this community deserves to be protected.
Yeah. But the first mistake was fatal. The first mistake led to, arguably, to loss of lives and a loss of a limb for someone. I mean, again, as we discussed before, in those riots, those were the only deaths that night. I wonder
the prosecutor said it.
Exactly.
Now, I mean, I realize that you can argue it from different directions and reach the same facts of those were the only 3 who were shot, 2 dead. But why didn't the governor do more? Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if that will come up in the defense. We don't know. We're going to continue to watch it with you because we're going to continue our coverage of the closing arguments in the Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial. Now, here's America Reports.